Tell millions. Weed is universal. You name me one race, don't smoke, but
I pulled up and playing loud music, triggered something in him. He came and he attacked me. I walked off the set, went somewhere secluded, and I cried, bro. Because I felt like I just had
DeAndre Bonds was close to becoming Hollywood's next big star. He was set to work with the legendary Denzel, and fame, lights, and glory were all within his reach. But instead of walking red carpets, he ended up in prison, spending more than a decade behind bars.
I just booked a movie, got hired by Denzel Washington to play in Antoine Fisher.
If you've seen classics like The Wood, Tales from the Hood, or Get on the Bus, you probably remember DeAndre Bonds as a standout talent back in the day. But his promising career came to a sudden stop after a shocking incident. He stabbed and killed his aunt's boyfriend.
And wind up pulling a knife and getting stabbing him one time, and he died.
Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of DeAndre's troubles. Years later, he found himself back in prison after multiple run-ins with the law. In one disturbing incident, he almost killed another relative with a knife. There's a lot to unpack about his life, so let's dive in. DeAndre Bonds was born on March 19, 1976 in Inglewood, California, and grew up in South Central LA. His childhood home was on 8th and Avalon, right in the middle of Swan territory, a neighborhood controlled by the Swans, a notorious blood gang feared across Los Angeles. Life there wasn't just tough, it was a battlefield, with the Swans having beef with almost every gang around them, making violence a daily reality. DeAndre's childhood was rough. His father was absent, struggling with alcohol addiction, while his mother battled a crack addiction. On top of that, he grew up in a chaotic household with 7 siblings. His mom had 8 kids with 6 different men, which meant DeAndre had to grow up fast.
And I guess your mother had children with, six different men?
Yeah, my mother has, growing up in the time she grew up in the area that she grew up in.
Stability was something DeAndre never really had. He moved around different parts of LA, from the east side to the Hoovers, down to Compton, and back to Swan territory. As a kid, he was filled with anger and frustration, and with so much chaos around him, it's no surprise he developed a temper. By 6th grade, he was already getting kicked out of school for fighting, but despite everything, DeAndre managed to stay out of the gang life that controlled his neighborhood, and he lived a good life with no manpower problems. Due to these problems, he was also asked to stay out of the gang life that controlled his neighborhood. Gangs were always looking for new recruits, but he never joined, which was not easy in that environment. Instead, he found his own way to hustle, selling candy, showing he had a sharp mind for making money, even as a kid.
I had to be the man at an early age because we needed what we needed.
Every week, DeAndre would take the bus to Hollywood with $20 in his pocket, buy candy from the 99-cent store, and walk up and down Sunset Boulevard selling it. On a good day, he could make over $100 in just a few hours. But it wasn't just about the money. This hustle gave him a sense of independence and purpose. During this time, he met some of the biggest names in entertainment, like Martin Lawrence, Tupac, Scarface, and Ice Cube. For a kid from South Central, meeting celebrities on Sunset Boulevard was surreal. It gave him a glimpse into a life he could only dream about. Little did he know, his path was slowly aligning with fame and Hollywood. At just 13 years old, DeAndre caught a big break when he landed a role in his school play. That moment changed everything. The thrill of performing, the applause, and the attention sparked something deep inside him. Acting wasn't just a dream anymore, it became his purpose. He channeled all his emotions, anger, frustration, and energy, into acting and chased it with everything he had. His big break came with a role in the cult classic Tales from the Hood, marking his debut on the big screen. More opportunities followed, and he booked roles in Sunset Park, Get on the Bus, 3 Strikes, and The Wood. His role as Stacy in The Wood became his most iconic, portraying the protective older brother of Alicia and a gang member from the neighborhood. His performance felt raw and real, connecting with people who grew up in similar neighborhoods. The role cemented DeAndre as a recognizable face in Hollywood, and his star was clearly on the rise.
Stacy? You gonna say my name, homie? Damn!
As more roles came in and the checks got bigger, DeAndre started feeling himself a little too much. Success came fast, and with it came a lifestyle he wasn't ready for. He began living recklessly, spending money like it would never stop, partying hard and drinking heavily. He loved the spotlight and attention, but wasn't thinking about the risks. In 1999, he had a run-in with the law and pled guilty to battery, receiving probation. His career was still rising, and soon after, he landed a role in Lockdown. But just months before filming, life took a dangerous turn. While standing outside his uncle's house, DeAndre became the target of gang violence. A car full of gang members rolled up, flashing gang signs to provoke him. Since he wasn't affiliated, he didn't respond, and the car sped off. But it didn't end there. The same car came back, and this time the gang members jumped out with guns drawn, chasing him down. Before he could get away, they opened fire.
I was just at my uncle's house, and I guess you could say at the wrong place at the wrong time. Guys rolled by, threw up some gang signs. I was standing in the front yard. I didn't throw no gang signs back up. They left.
DeAndre was shot 3 times, twice in the leg and once in the thigh. One bullet went straight through his thigh and got lodged in his backside. It was a terrifying moment that could have ended his life, but somehow he survived. He was rushed to the hospital and, despite his serious injuries, walked out alive. For DeAndre, getting shot wasn't shocking. It was just another harsh reality of growing up in South Central LA. According to him, back then, getting shot was almost normal, something that could happen to anyone for no reason. But instead of being shaken by the incident, he felt something else. He compared it to how Tupac must have felt after surviving his own shooting, like a true thug who had been tested by the streets and came out alive. With that mindset, DeAndre didn't let the shooting slow him down. He showed up on the Lockdown set on crutches, carrying himself with a new kind of confidence. The production team even wrote his limp into his character, making it part of the story. Lockdown became one of DeAndre's most praised performances, where he played a man wrongfully imprisoned for murder, a role that pushed him to dig deep emotionally.
Decide if I have a seat?
Yeah.
The movie was filmed at the infamous New Mexico State Prison, the site of one of the deadliest prison riots in U.S. history, where over 33 inmates had lost their lives. The grim setting added to the intensity of the story, and DeAndre gave everything he had to the role. Many fans and critics consider his performance in Lockdown to be his best work, but some moments during filming left him deeply conflicted. One scene in particular took an emotional toll on him, a moment where his character was assaulted by a cellmate. He managed to get through one take, but afterward he was overwhelmed with emotion. He walked into another room and broke down in tears, feeling like he had betrayed himself by agreeing to do the scene. DeAndre later admitted it was one of the hardest scenes he had ever filmed, and if he could, he would erase it from his career.
No, I did not want to do it. That's one of the worst scenes I ever did, and I wish I could go back and take it.
Despite the emotional toll Lockdown took on him, DeAndre bounced back and was in high spirits when he arrived at his aunt's house on September 5, 2001. Just weeks earlier, he had booked a supporting role in Denzel Washington's directorial debut, Antoine and Fisher, a huge milestone in his career. Feeling good, he blasted Tupac on his stereo as he pulled into the driveway. But in his excitement, he accidentally knocked over a trash can while parking. What seemed like a small mistake set off a chain of events that would change his life forever. As DeAndre stepped out of the car, his aunt's boyfriend Anthony confronted him about the trash can. The situation quickly turned into a heated argument, and soon a fight broke out. Anthony, who was much larger than DeAndre, easily overpowered him. It wasn't just a scuffle. Anthony kept beating on him, and things escalated fast. Desperate to protect himself, DeAndre ran into the house and grabbed the first thing he could find, a steak knife from the kitchen.
When I pulled up and he was attacking me and I'm trying to defend myself, I couldn't get him, you know what I mean? So I ran in the house and I grabbed him.
With the knife in hand, DeAndre tried to warn Anthony, hoping he would back off, but Anthony wasn't scared. Instead, he rushed at DeAndre again. In the heat of the moment, DeAndre did what he thought he had to do to protect himself. He stabbed Anthony once in the chest.
And this time, when he approached me and he swung, I stuck the knife out, and he got hit in the chest.
At first, neither of them realized what had happened. It all happened so fast. But then they both saw the blood. So much blood, it was everywhere. The fight came to an abrupt stop and Anthony collapsed. DeAndre tried to help him, but Anthony ended up dying right there in his arms. For DeAndre, the whole thing felt surreal, like a terrible dream he couldn't wake up from. He was in shock. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He hadn't gone to his aunt's house looking for trouble, let alone to kill anyone, but now someone was dead, and there was no undoing it. The police arrested DeAndre shortly after, charging him with murder. To make things worse, he wasn't given any bail, which meant he had to sit in jail while waiting for his case to move forward. What made it even harder to accept was that prosecutors initially charged him with first-degree premeditated murder. Their argument was that by running into the house and grabbing the knife, DeAndre had shown intent, making it premeditated in their eyes. For DeAndre, this was devastating. He wasn't a murderer, and he hadn't planned any of this. It all happened in the middle of a physical altercation, but now he was facing a charge that could send him to prison for life. During his time behind bars, DeAndre had to fight his case for over a year. The prosecutors eventually offered him a plea deal, 12 years for manslaughter, but DeAndre turned it down. When the case finally went to trial, the jury didn't buy the first-degree murder argument. They found DeAndre guilty of manslaughter instead of murder, which was a huge relief for him. Manslaughter still carried a heavy sentence, but it was nowhere near the life sentence he would have faced if he had been convicted of first- or second-degree murder.
They said not guilty on first degree, not guilty on second degree. I felt relief because I knew that my intention wasn't murder.
In the end, DeAndre accepted his fate. He understood that someone had lost their life, and that his actions, even if unintentional, led to a tragic outcome. He didn't go to his aunt's house that day with the intention of hurting anyone, but he was still willing to take responsibility for what happened. DeAndre has always said that the way his sentencing was handled wasn't fair. According to the law, when he was found guilty, his sentence should have been decided by the jury, not the judge, but that didn't happen. The judge dismissed the jury entirely and took matters into his own hands, giving DeAndre the maximum sentence for manslaughter. What made this worse was that the maximum the jury could have given him was 7 years, but the judge gave him 11 years.
He gave me the maximum sentence.
Oh, the jury could have given you a lower sentence.
The max they could have given me 7 years.
DeAndre felt like the judge's decision was personal. He believed the judge was biased against him, likely because of his race. It didn't make sense to him, especially with all the support he had in the courtroom. He had a long list of people who showed up to vouch for him. His family, the directors he had worked with, people from his community, and even the church. No one spoke against him, not even the victim's family. In fact, the victim's mother spoke on his behalf, saying she knew him and his character. Despite all of this, the judge didn't seem to care, and DeAndre felt like the deck was stacked against him from the start.
Not one person in that courtroom that was against me, not even from the victim's family, because the mother knew me. My character.
DeAndre was sentenced to 11 years in prison for manslaughter and served his time at the Ironwood State Prison in California, a tough and rough place. As an actor, he stood out right away, and other inmates recognized him from his movies, which made him a target. Some would challenge him directly, and others would press him because of the roles he had played, like Stacy from The Wood, who was a gang member. In prison, people don't always separate the actor from the character, so DeAndre had to constantly prove himself to survive. He stuck to the rules, stayed focused, and did what he had to do to make it through, but it wasn't easy. He witnessed violence, even seeing people die in front of him. At one point, he had his jaw broken in a fight. The years of trauma left both physical and mental scars on him. After serving his time, DeAndre was released on March 29, 2011. Walking out of the prison gates was a moment of freedom, but adjusting back into society wasn't smooth. Having spent so many years in survival mode, the outside world felt completely different. For the first year, he struggled just to be around people. Crowds made him anxious, and he often felt like an outsider. In 2012, he got back into acting and landed a role in Gangster Squad, a big deal for him and a sign he could still have a future in Hollywood. But life wasn't done testing him. In 2015, he was attacked in Los Angeles by unknown gang members. They beat him unconscious, leaving injuries on his face and body. Even though he wasn't in the streets anymore, the streets hadn't forgotten him. Thankfully, DeAndre survived the attack and recovered. However, it left a mark on him, and not long after, he got into trouble with the law again. He was caught carrying a knife while walking down the street. To him, it was a matter of survival, because he still had enemies who wanted to harm him.
Well, I guess after you got out, you got arrested again and had to do 20 months?
Yeah, I did 20 months.
What was it for?
Carrying a knife.
Unfortunately, the authorities didn't see it that way, and DeAndre ended up serving another year in prison. It was a setback, but it wasn't enough to break his spirit. When he got out, he was more determined than ever to rebuild his life and career. He worked hard to fix his public image and show that he was more than the mistakes of his past. His perseverance paid off when he landed one of the most iconic roles of his career, playing Scully on the hit TV series Snowfall. Scully wasn't just any character, he was the leader of the Crenshaw Mafia Bloods, a gang in the heart of Inglewood. Scully's territory in the show was the infamous Bottoms, an apartment complex that served as the gang's base. Though the show made it look authentic, the actual filming took place at an apartment complex on 2625 Pasadena Avenue. What made Scully such a standout character was his complexity. At first, he was shown as completely unhinged, a bloodthirsty gang leader with a few screws loose. He was feared by everyone, and for good reason. But as the show went on, Scully's character began to evolve. Layers of his personality were revealed, showing he wasn't just a one-dimensional villain. He had depth, struggles, and moments of redemption. By the end, Scully became one of the most relatable and redeemable characters on the show. Fans who had followed his career from the beginning were thrilled to see him back on screen, doing what he did best. More than that, DeAndre's journey was inspiring. He had been through so much, but he never gave up.
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and stay informed. Stay tuned for more updates, and let's keep our news accurate.